Welcome to the Comedy Reset Spotlight. This is the place to be if you want to hear from some of the most innovative and exciting comedy creators from around the globe. On this podcast, you'll hear from a variety of guests who are pushing the boundaries of what comedy can be. If you're looking for fresh perspectives and new ideas, this is the podcast for you.
Episode 17. Fishkill, New York comedian Linda Desantis.
When did you first start doing stand-up comedy?
I started doing comedy in 2018. It was in late fall 2018, so my first show was in 2019.
What made you want to become a stand-up comedian?
I don't know that I wanted to be a stand-up comedian, but I do clearly remember the time that I realized I was funny. And that was years ago. That was close to 40 years ago. Something had happened and I said something at work and everyone around me laughed hysterically. And they tend to laugh a lot when I say things at work. The bosses don't laugh as much as the coworkers, unfortunately.
Who were some of your influences?
If you're talking about the first stand-up and funny females that I remember, I think Toady Fields comes to mind, Irma Bonbeck, Phyllis Diller, Minnie Pearl, actually, too. There are quite a few of them, but I look back towards things that, like, who was the guy on Laugh-In? The show Laugh-In, and we had this plant at work that every once in a while somebody would say something and you just did a Laugh-In line. You'd go, very interesting but stupid.
What was your first time on stage like?
I guess my first time on stage doing stand-up when I was in front of an audience would have been the graduation show at Governor's. And I knew my set. I knew what order I had to do it in. And I got up there and I delivered my first joke. And the crowd roared. And that was the last time the crowd has roared, by the way. I forgot where I was. And I had only done one joke. And there's actually a video of me standing there counting on my fingers what jokes I had to do next.
What's your favorite joke?
I guess the joke that I want to hear, and I would love to hear him say it. My dad used to tell this joke where somebody dies and they go to hell because they were not a good person, and the devil greets them and is showing them around, and they get to pick where they're going to be for eternity. He brings them over to room number 1. And room number 1 is absolutely blazing. There are flames all over. Could not, it was so hot. Then he brings them over to room number 2, and it's the opposite. It is freezing. There's ice all over. Everybody's blue from being frozen. And then he brings them over to room 3. And everybody's waist high in poop, in basically shit. And they're standing around drinking coffee. And he says to himself, well, this is not that bad. I guess I'll get used to the smell, right? So he picks room number 3. Just then, the bell goes off at work. And you hear, break time's over. Everybody back on your heads. That's my dad joke.
What's the worst heckler experience you've ever had?
I have never been heckled on stage. I have, however, been heckled by other, and you can't see the air quotes, comedians at open mics. In particular, there was one open mic that I went to that anytime we walked in, any woman, there were snide remarks made. One time in particular, I had gone with a couple of other comedians, and these fellas took the opportunity to make fun of our age. So that's really the only time, and I guess the only way that I handle it is I moved 85 miles away. I don't have to go there anymore.
What's the best gig you've ever had?
Except for the ones that definitely SUCK, each gig is the best gig I've ever had. I like it when the audience is hot. I prefer to have other talented comics on the show along with me, and I just keep growing and getting better. And the last show I had was the best gig I ever had, and the next show I have will be the best gig I ever have.
What's the worst gig you've ever had?
Worst gig I ever had, also a best gig. I was invited to do a show up in the capital region for breast cancer, and unbelievable talented ladies who were, it was a ladies comedy show. But it was also the worst in that we did it in a bar and you did not have the full attention of everybody. So you really had to work hard to make people listen because of the atmosphere. That really was. So I would say that the worst gigs or gig I would ever have would be something where it's very hard to get the audience focused, or you have sound issues or something like that, but you work through them as best you can.
How do you deal with stage fright?
When I first started, I was a little nervous. You know, that first show was frightening. So I said, let me have a vodka and cranberry. And I had one, and that did enough to calm my nerves. I did that for the second show then also. One drink before, about an hour before. Then the third show, I had 2 drinks. I couldn't remember my lines. Ever since then, I do not drink before I get up. I, for some reason now, don't have the stage fright I did before, although I did experience it quite recently at the latest gig I did. I had a little bit of stage fright that I recognized afterward, and I think I'm going to work on it. You know, the best thing I can do is just be prepared and do my set and try to find the funny and have a conversation.
What was the most unexpected response you've ever gotten to one of your jokes?
That had to be on my opener. My opening joke, I talk about some office equipment that malfunctions. And I clearly remember the first time I delivered that joke on stage. The audience, like I said before, they roared. I lost my place. I had no idea where I was. I was not expecting such a loud response to a joke.
How do you prepare for a show?
I tape my set. I make my set list. Normally, if I'm doing a tight 5, it's the same tight 5 all the time. If I'm doing 8, I'll add a few more. If I'm doing 10, I'll add a lot more. Might have 2 tight 5s together. But I tape it, make the set list, tape it, and I listen to it over and over and over again. Especially if I am driving, I will hook it up into my sound system and just hit repeat, and it will keep repeating and repeating and repeating. And as I'm driving, I am not talking to myself. I'm rehearsing my set.
What's the best advice you've ever been given about stand-up comedy?
be nice to everyone. Absolutely everyone. You would think that comedy is a huge, huge world. It is not. Everybody in comedy is somehow related to somebody else in comedy. And you might not be physically related, but I know, 100, 200, 300 comedians, couple of hundred producers. You go into a club and you sass a waitress in the club. That waitress could be the owner's daughter. You need to be very, very nice to everyone.
What's the worst advice you've ever been given about stand-up comedy?
Oh, people think it's easy. People really think that stand-up comedy is easy. It is not easy, not in the least. It is a lot of fun, but it's not easy. You have to have a concept. You have to work that concept, and then that concept becomes a joke, and the joke then gets honed and honed and honed until it's this sharp little tool you have in your tool belt, and you take it out and you set it up and you add to it and you deliver the punch, and hopefully the crowd erupts in laughter. So your worst advice would be that, you could just get up there and do it. You could drink and you can do it. No, you can't. You have to work on your craft.
What would you say is the biggest misconception about stand-up comedy?
Oh, crap. You can just add in that previous answer right here again and play it again so you can hear it. It is not easy. It is hard work and very gratifying when it goes over well.
What do you believe is the key to success in stand-up comedy?
It is the same way you get to Carnegie Hall. Practice, practice, practice. Patience, perseverance. Let me look for different P words that you need. You're probably going to need to be able to hold the P too, because sometimes you're going to find a gig that's 2 hours away and you just got to drive there. But that's besides the point. The key to success is going to be to work hard, to dig in and get it done, to get up at 6 o'clock and go into a joke writing room to hone your stuff, to attend, to work on writing your stuff 6 days a week, 7 days a week. Even if you put in an hour a day minimum, you will develop very well. And that's going to be the key to my success, is the level of work I put into this.
What do you think is the biggest obstacle that stand-up comedians face?
Unfortunately, I think that, the biggest obstacle is probably ourselves, not believing in ourselves and knowing that we can do it. We just have to get up there and do it. Another obstacle is that, unfortunately, the area is oversaturated, and it's oversaturated not in a good way. The oversaturation comes when people get up at an open mic and they just start spewing and there are no jokes. And then a promoter will put that person on a show. And unfortunately, people who are really trying to do this seriously are asked to bring family members to these shows. And it's unfortunate that's the biggest obstacle for me, is that these shows then, where I could ask a family member to come, but my family members are older. I'm not 20 years old and have a lot of money to waste. So it's a lot for a 40, 50, 60-year-old to go out for the night. And the last thing you want that 40, 50, 60-year-old to hear is a barrage of dick, tit, and other horrible jokes. And that really is the biggest obstacle that I'm facing, is that I can't get the stage time because I don't want to subject my people that I have to comedy that isn't comedy. I want them to go out. I want them to be able to laugh.
What do you think sets stand-up comedy apart from other forms of comedy?
Does not apply.
What are the benefits of stand-up comedy?
Oh, the benefits of stand-up comedy? Certainly, absolutely, certainly not the pay. If you are going into stand-up comedy to keep a roof over your head, um, have some cardboard boxes I can lend you. You're not coming here for the money. You're coming here for the companionship and the ability to make people laugh. It is an honor and a privilege to stand up in front of people who have taken their hard-earned money and laid sometimes $25, $35 a ticket down, maybe even more. These people had to work a couple of hours to make that kind of money. And that's just the ticket. And then they're going to buy food and they're going to buy drinks. So you're asking somebody to spend a day's pay or more to stand there and listen to you. You better put a smile on their face. That's your job. And the benefit is you seeing them smile, you hearing them laugh, knowing that that joke was whittled down to perfection to get the response that you got. That's the benefit of stand-up comedy.
What's your process for writing jokes?
Joke writing for me is either extremely simple, when I come up with a joke, for instance, the one about the fella I interview. I do this little 30-second joke. I had actually done an interview at work. I came out of that interview, walked into a room, and said my joke exactly as I presented on stage. That one wrote itself. They don't all write themselves. So you come up with your idea. What am I going to do? And then you work from there. What's the funny in it, you know? My little niece asking about whether or not she could have adult beverages. Where's the funny in that? And you write and rewrite and rewrite. And even after you've been presenting that joke for 4.5 years, you turn around and you say, I know what I can add. And you add that and it either works or it doesn't. And you keep going from there.
What's the most important thing for a stand-up comedian to remember?
Be nice. Don't steal. Don't, remember the golden rule. Quite honestly, don't do bad things to other people. And hopefully they will not do bad things to you. So if you go into a club, you're nice to everybody. If you hear a joke, you laugh. You do not take it and use it as your own. And remember that you too once sucked the first time you went up on stage. You do get better. Quite honestly, the difference in my work now as opposed to 4 years ago is tremendous. You're going to work and grow and become a more complex comedian. Just be nice to everybody.
What do you think are the best techniques for dealing with hecklers?
You could marry them, then send them back to their mothers.
What do you think are the biggest mistakes that stand-up comedians make?
Here we go back to the same thing again. The biggest mistake that a stand-up comedian could make is not being nice to people or breaking those golden rules. Those are going to bite you in the butt every time. You need to be nice to everybody. You need to be courteous. Show up on time. Show up on time. Dress appropriately. People are spending money to see you. I don't want to see your ripped jeans, your dirty sneakers, and a t-shirt with a vulgar saying on it. If I have laid down $100 to see a show, I expect that person on the stage to look like they took a bath that day. Be prepared for your show. Treat the audience with respect as much as everybody else around you.
What is the best way to learn stand-up comedy?
I don't know that you can learn stand-up comedy, but you can learn comedy writing. You can learn other things. You can learn delivery. You can learn joke structure and things of that nature. But I don't know that you can learn stand-up. You have to practice to the point where you're comfortable. I've met some extremely talented joke writers that do not have a stage presence whatsoever, but extremely talented joke writers, just the same. So you have to develop your persona, or it's actually not even developing your persona. You have to get up on the stage and you have to hold a conversation with an audience that you're not encouraging to verbalize their response to you. Their response that you want from them is a laugh, is a clap, is a ha, is a chuckle. So you got to get up there and practice.
What do you think is the best way to improve as a stand-up comedian?
That's going to be the same way you get to Carnegie Hall. Practice, practice, practice.
What has stand-up comedy taught you about yourself?
I have learned I'm a very lazy person and judgmental. I don't know if that's good or bad. The laziness, I hate typing. I absolutely hate typing. I would much rather talk or have something do the writing for me. And that's why I use a tool that is an app on my phone, and I can talk into it and it actually types for me. I then throw that over into an email, pull it into a Word document, and I can start manipulating words and things like that are in print then on the screen. The other thing is I'm very judgmental. I am very judgmental of other comedians' work and whether or not it is working for the audience, because let's face facts, we are there to do a job. And my job is to make those people laugh. Your job is to make those people laugh. I should not be able to get up on the stage and have crickets for 10 minutes and then you get up afterward and have to try and get people back. It's taught me that I'm judgmental of other people. There's certain places I don't want to go, certain people I don't want to work with, and I have to get over that because, like I said before, you got to be nice to everybody.
What motivates you to keep performing stand-up comedy?
The people I get to work with. I am so very fortunate and blessed to have met the nicest people who are encouraging and helpful and hardworking. And that's really what keeps me getting up and doing it. And it keeps me off the corner selling myself. What can I tell you? And doing drugs.
What advice would you give to someone who's thinking about doing stand-up comedy?
You're thinking to do it? Do it. But do it 100%. Give it your all. Go in. Take a class. Take 2 classes. Go to open mics. Don't hurt anybody. Be nice to everyone. Do it.
Is there anything you'd like to add that we did not cover?
Only that I started in stand-up comedy at a very difficult time. It was right before the plague we had. I actually started, did a few shows, fell, broke some ribs, was just getting back, had done one show after I broke my ribs. And that was on March 7th. By March 13th of 2020, the world had shut down. I did not know what I was going to do. I was a single woman living alone, and you're in the house. And I was fortunate that one of the comedians that I had met at a show looked me up on Facebook or something and called me and said, "Hey, there's this joke writing group. Comedians writing jokes at home. You have to join us." And I did. And I cannot even begin to express what a godsend comedians writing jokes at home, and then the predecessor to Joke Zoom, which, it's Joke Zoom. It saved my life. It gave me people in my house around me 6 days a week for a couple of years. And not only did it give me people around me that we could have conversations and become friends from all over the world, it helped me work on my act. That when we went back, I remember seeing someone now remember, I told you I'm judgmental. And this had been one fella that I had met these other comedians at a competition, because they like to do competitions in comedy. And this guy was one of the judges at the competition. And when I saw him go on stage for the first time after we had been in lockdown for 2 years, I realized how fortunate I was to have found Joke Zoom, because while other comedians were stagnating for 2 years, I was able to work and develop my game. And I didn't lose my insanity. I was locked in the house for 2 years by myself. I can't thank Rob Chiaffi enough. He is a wonder and definitely a saint. There should be like a little Saint Rob Chiaffi at the Comedy Hall of Fame. He's probably holding a microphone. Thank you, Rob.
I've been your host, Rob Chiaffi. Don't forget to laugh today. It's good for you. Comedy Reset Spotlight is a podcast that brings you today's freshest and funniest comedy creators. If you like what you heard, please subscribe to hear more.